What is up, friends? Rob here. Some know me as the Medicare Minister in the space that I'm in, and I want to welcome you back to another Spitting Fire Leadership podcast. And I'm back with my man, Mr. Irvin Pena. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it.
All right. And Irvin, will you say what's up to everybody real quickly?
What's going on, everyone? I'm glad to be here, and we're just going to spit some fire and just enjoy where this conversation takes us today.
Absolutely, man. And I'm so glad to have you on. When I first reached out to you, I was excited because I know your content has been a big inspiration to me and actually helped me. I know it's going to help some others when this content drops. And so I'm excited about having you on. But before we dive into the what they say here in Mississippi, the meat and taters, if you will, the meat and potatoes, what I want to do is I want to remind everybody to please make sure that you like. If you find value in this today, please comment, share this with somebody who you think needs to hear this. But most importantly, make sure you turn on the notification so that way you're alerted every time we drop fresh content like this. And so, Irvin, thank you so much for being on. Listen, do you have a nickname? Do you have something you go by?
Irvin, Irv.
Okay, Irvin. All right. I didn't know, man. I figured it was Irvin, but I wanted to ask. Thank you once again for
seeing my stuff. Irv Official. That's usually
okay. Yeah. That's where I found you on YouTube, man. And so I know you're going to bring it today. And once again, thank you for being on. So here's where I always like to start, just to kind of give our audience a little bit of like a 30,000 foot view of your story, a little bit of the background, maybe some of that transition time up to what you're doing today.
Okay. I would say that if I were to kind of just put it on a 30,000 foot overview, because I want to, keep it as concise so we can share as much value as possible.
Sure.
I would say that I launched all of my platforms at the beginning of the pandemic. So we would say 2020, March, maybe a little bit before February, more so. 2020 was when I really started going hands-on before the pandemic really broke out. Once the pandemic kind of like everyone was going on shutdown, everyone was kind of scrambling what was going on. I started noticing an uptick in people that were just kind of scrolling through their phones because you were just working from home. So I told my wife, I said, I'm going to start pushing out more content, going into a lockdown, and let's just see where it takes us. Well, fast forward to where we are today at the start of 2022, we've grown our audiences to a collective just over 800,000 across the board between YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. But specifically, I also started noticing a trend of up-and-coming entrepreneurs that were just hungry for information, whether it's business credit, getting the credit right, money management, and even leadership, because I think that a lot of those are just core values and really just core principles that we just all need to take on regardless of where you are in business.
Yeah. And so, I think that's a really important place to start, because you've grown your audience. I know I found you on YouTube. How many subscribers do you have on YouTube now currently?
Oh, we're sitting at about 115,000 right now.
115,000. What kind of mindset, though? Because this is a leadership podcast. So I want to talk about it, but you got a lot of other content we're going to share. What type of mindset do you have to possess to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to keep pumping out even more content because I know it's going to bring value to me? Can you tell me what role mindset played in all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that the main mindset that someone has to have, especially when you're creating content, is you're going to suck at first. Like anything else, you're just going to suck at first. You're going to sound horrible. You're going to sound horrible. You're going to stumble across your words. Your lighting is going to suck. But the other side of that, which is kind of like a sword, right? Is you also have to understand that you're good at what you do. You also have to understand that you are bringing value, and you also have to understand that it's not always going to be this way. So it's kind of like that dance that we have to just deal with.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you just started not even that long ago. I think a lot of people don't realize that if you're really bringing value, right, and you're really making an impact in people's lives. And, but before we started recording this, I was sharing you just the value that you brought to me and my family's life and the content that you have. It's amazing how exponentially that will grow. What do you think the biggest challenge is for people to turn on the iPhone or turn on a camera, whether even if the lighting sucks? I mean, today I did an interview this morning and something happened with the camera and it went off and the mic wasn't working, but I switched to my MacBook camera. And you know what? It just happens, right? It just happens, and you got to just roll with those punches. But why do you think so many people are fearful? Is that what it is? Maybe they're fearful, or what is a main barrier you've seen with the people that you've coached in just getting started and building their brand online?
I would say that the main thing is a lot of us, and I'll include myself on there because I don't think any of us are shy of it, where we kind of tend to hide behind this whole imposter syndrome. But even if we pull that back a little bit more, imposter syndrome is just another guardrail for the word fear.
Yeah.
I would say that fear is the most dominant, what I would say. I'm not sure if you want to call it feeling. I'm not sure if you want to call it kind of mental block, where we're always thinking, what if this doesn't work out? What if what I say is wrong? What if I get called out? I've only been doing this for, let's say, 6 months. Someone's going to say someone's more experienced than I am. But on the other side of that, again, with a double-edged sword, we also have to remember that we have to step out in faith and wonder, what if it does work out? What if no one calls us out? In fact, what if someone actually calls us and says, hey, your content's helping me out, or hey, can I book you for a consultation?
And so how did you know, though, like when you said I started this right in the pandemic, how did you know you had, for a lack of a better word, something special? How did you know that you had value to bring to people? Is this something that you've been studying behind the scenes? Because I know you talk a lot about business credit, business funding, leveraging other people's money. Is that something you studied? Do you have a mentor? How did you get into that space, and why did you get in that space?
So I'll tackle the first part of that question. For the credit part of the question, the reason why I started getting so obsessed with it was because my credit sucked. And so I ran my credit to the floor, because before doing what I do now, I used to sell real estate. And if you know anything about real estate, there's a ramp up time from getting listings or getting buyers to closing out those transactions. So I was what you would call on a hamster wheel of getting clients, then closing them, and then paying my bills, right? Just that entrepreneur grind. But what ended up happening was I pretty much went into a phase when I first got married that I didn't have any sales coming in. So I had to start using my credit cards. Well, unfortunately, what ended up happening was I didn't have enough business fundamentals. Looking back at it now, I didn't have enough business fundamentals to keep that cash flow going. So then what ended up happening on this side is I just ended up going into debt. I think I was at $40,000, maybe $50,000 worth of credit card debt. And so that's when I started researching, okay, how can I clean my credit? How can I speak with these companies so that they can lower maybe the amount of debt that I have with them? And so that kind of went back to the negotiating, which is what I tell pretty much a lot of people that reach out to me, of how to do that themselves. And then it was also kind of like a bummer, because my business started picking up and I had about $50,000, maybe $60,000 liquid at the time in my bank account. And I was looking for a new place to rent. I wasn't owning a home yet, so I was still looking to rent a property. And even with having $50,000, $60,000 liquid, I would say, hey, to every landlord, hey, I can give you 5-6 months in advance. On top of that, you can keep the retainer, whatever it is. I just need a place to stay. And they still wouldn't take me because my credit still hadn't caught up.
Wow. So that began the journey, and you beginning to study this, learning these hacks, if you will, learning these tips.
So that's one thing. When I first started posting on YouTube and TikTok, before my Instagram really started taking off, I literally just put out a video just because I figured this is something that I can share with everyone. So, if this helped me, maybe it'll help out a couple of people. Lo and behold, I woke up to about, I'd say 3,000, maybe 4,000 views. Wow. And I was like, wait a minute. I remember only sharing some of my videos with some other clients that I had at the time. I only shared it with like 20 or 30 via text message. Yeah. How did I wake up to this many views? So when I saw that, I said, maybe this is a sample size of what a larger demographic is struggling with.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, like, as someone who's an entrepreneur myself, I didn't even know a lot of the content that you were sharing. Like, I was watching video after video and I was like, wow, and all these data points, the terminology you guys use and in these different groups and stuff. And so it was almost like hidden secrets, right? That if people like you wouldn't have put it out there, then people like me would not have been able to get the funding that we needed in order to get our businesses off the ground. And listen, if you're watching today, you need to pay attention, because we're getting ready to get into it, because this has been a big game changer for me personally. And so what I want to do is I want to transition into leveraging other people's money. Just let's keep it real simple, but let's play dumb for a minute. What is that in your world? What does that mean?
Yeah. Leveraging people's money, in my opinion, is pretty much your ability to kind of use that as weight to kind of be able to push you across the finish line without you having to use your own strength, right? That's usually how I break it down. The caveat that I say to that is I always warn people, and this is kind of like where the mentorship comes along, kind of like what you do, kind of like what I do, is I always like to at least make sure that someone has a game plan in place before we actually show them how to leverage money, because if not, you can get caught kind of with your pants down, so to speak.
Sure.
If you're just out there, let's say 40, 50K in funding, kind of like what was going on with the PPP loan, and then they're just out there buying Lamborghinis. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. They're just out there squandering it and blowing it on stupid crap, right? So I get that. So let me ask you this. When it comes to leveraging other people's money, let's just, because a lot of people that are watching this are in the insurance space, because that's what we're in. I mean, we have a diverse audience, but for someone who's wanting to start, let's just say an insurance agent, let's just be hypothetical and just kind of get real practical for a minute. And let's say that, they have, 30, 40,000 in the bank, but they really don't want to use that liquid if they don't have to. And I'm just giving a scenario here to make sure people understand. You're saying that you can help them through not only the free stuff that you give on YouTube, but also investing in the mentorship program that you offer, that you can show them how to get access to funding, maybe even interest-free funding for a certain period of time that allows them to keep that liquid there. So that way they have it on hand while using other person's money, whether it's bank, credit card, or some other type lender.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the things that we do for a lot of our clients, and I've even taught it before, like you said, I have a bunch of free content on YouTube, is through something called credit stacking. Credit stacking is, just to keep it simple, it's pretty much your ability to stack credit cards. So the way that I teach it is I always say go after any credit cards that have an introductory period of, let's say, 0% APR. 0% APR is just a fancy way of saying you're not going to pay any interest for, let's say, 12 months, 15 months, or 18 months. So it's pretty much free money for that period. So if we're credit card stacking, this means that we're, let's say, going to get 3, possibly 4 different credit cards, either with the same bank or different banks. And once we add that up, and again, it's in the word, once we stack it, let's say you have 15 cards per bank. At 4 cards, we're looking at $60,000, 0% interest for, again, just to use this number because it's common, 12 to 15 months. We do that like clockwork. And I even show others how to do that like clockwork. In my opinion, that's kind of like the go-to if you have some pretty solid personal credit already built out.
Gotcha. So what do you say, though, like to the Dave Ramseys, right? That credit cards are bad. Those are evil. They're of the devil, if you will. What do you say to that? I mean, I think you've already alluded to what you teach, financial literacy and responsibility. But what is your rebuttal to somebody that thinks credit cards are bad and in regards to this method?
In regards to this method, I would say that everyone has their financial approach that they take. So if someone already has that ideology, I'm not trying to convince them. For the most part, I put out my content not to convince someone else of what they should do. I put up my content for someone that's already looking for an answer similar to what I'm providing. But to Dave Ramsey's approach, there's a lot of things that Dave Ramsey teaches that I agree on. I agree of having that emergency fund. I agree of getting out of bad debts. I agree of not carrying too much of that debt that's not going to move the needle. I actually just finished making a video on that, ironically, that I speak about debts, but I also, on the other side, I always mention to get out of any debt that's not moving the needle. So if I have, let's say, a BMW that I'm driving, and it's not actually allowing me to pour more money into my business, that $800, look, I'm going to get out of that. I'm going to swap that lease out, and I'm going to drop that payment. And I'm going to get into something more affordable, at least for the time being, that's going to help me catapult my business, assuming the vehicle that I'm driving isn't used for my business.
Yeah, and that's interesting you bring that up because I'm thinking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? That a lot of people stay poor because they have so many liabilities. Yes. And then he even talks about how some people think certain things are assets, but they're really a liability, right? And that's really what you're talking about, is having that financial stewardship and literacy. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. What you're teaching is somebody starting a new business, whether it's an insurance agency, whatever. They need X amount of funding. They go credit stack 13, 14, 15 cards, have 50 to 60K, 0% interest. You're saying that the method that you teach is utilize those for that 0%, right? Hustle, grind, right? Do what you got to do to get all that paid back before you have to pay interest on it. Is that correct?
100%. And that's why I mentioned, make sure you have a game plan in place.
Yeah. And I heard in one of your videos, and why we're in this, I'd like to stay here just for a second. Why we're on this, tell me for the audience, what do you or define credit card arbitrage? Because is that something different than what we're talking about? That's still leveraging other people's money, correct?
Yeah. So credit card arbitrage, and you can also kind of mention it as credit card churning. That's for the most part when, let's say, you're pretty much playing a game, so to speak, with the bank or with the credit card company that you have in order for you to maximize the amount of points off of that card before you start getting hit with interest, before you start getting hit, let's say, with any payments on that card or any fees. One of the best ways that I can describe that is, let's say, and this is, by the way, this is going to depend on your state. So depending on where you're listening from, this may or may not work for you. One of the easiest ways that people usually pull cash or turn credit into cash is they take their credit card. So let's say they have a $3,000 limit on their credit card. They go to a local convenience store. They go to the grocery store and they purchase gift cards. When they purchase those gift cards, they then purchase money orders with those gift cards. The money orders now are as good as cash. So what they do now is they cash that out in their bank, and now they've, in a sense, legally pulled the cash off of the cards. So now there's two different things that they can do with that. They can either A, use that cash to make the moves that they want to make, because there's certain things that you can do with cash that you can't do with credit. Like, for example, buy real estate. You can't swipe a card to buy real estate, but you can with the cash that you just put out. Or on the back end, if you're playing more of the rewards game, you're going to use that cash that you now liquidated and you're going to pay down your credit card. And then you're going to live essentially rent-free and more of a luxurious lifestyle. Again, if this is the game that you want to play, off of the rewards that you make. And I will say, if you are playing that, I do teach it, but there are tax implications that go into it, because once you start playing it at a higher volume, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line.
Yeah. I mean, and just in my research and the way I found you, and the reason I wanted you to come on the channel is because it's amazing to me. I mean, people are buying exotic cars. People are buying real estate. People are buying crypto. People are buying all these different business side hustles and investing in that and using techniques like you and others are teaching. And I hate to sound like a kid at Christmas, but it just blew my mind, this world of credit card arbitrage and leveraging other people's monies through these hacks and these tips that are totally legal. That, listen, if you're watching this today as a business owner, you're really missing out if you're not leaning into these things that Irvin and others are teaching you, because like I said, it's been a great help to me and to my family. So let me transition to this. What's the difference between the personal credit, because I didn't even know this, and the LLC credit? Do you believe it's better to start an LLC than keep the personal, or do you think you need both?
So LLC in regards to only getting credit through your EIN? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. Great question. So let's say if someone's coming in and they have strong personal credit, it's going to help what we can say kind of fast forward the process of them building credit on the back end with their LLC, because there's really two things that happen. You can get credit for your LLC or through your LLC using your personal credit.
Right.
But let's say that your personal credit isn't as strong and you only want to build off of your business credit. That's known as building business credit through your EIN, which once you build that up, you no longer need to personally guarantee, which is just a fancy way of saying your ability to get business credit is no longer dependent off of your personal credit. And so if your business defaults, it's not pointing back to your personal name.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Once again, giving kudos to you and the others that I have followed. I didn't realize there was a difference between having a business credit profile, right, and then a personal credit profile. But there's even some business cards that when you personally guarantee, they report to your credit. So therefore, if you have to use a high utilization, it actually hurts you on your personal credit, where there's some business credit cards that only report to the business side and never report to your personal side. I mean, some say unless you default or some other stipulations. But let me ask you this. Why is this world, in my opinion, so hidden to people? Because it just seems like you had to, like, I had to really dig and dig and dig. And then it's like I started finding it. But there's a whole system when it comes to how many times to apply and all these other things. Why do you think this is not more prevalent? And I know I'm saying that loosely because you can go on YouTube, but really it's not taught in schools. It's really not taught as prevalent as I would think. Why is that?
That's the same question that I asked myself when I started coming up with the content. Even myself researching, I just started thinking, why isn't this out there? And even as I started learning myself, I would say that credit in most cases, or in some cases, I won't say most, it's still kind of taboo from the aspect of you still have a mixed audience that they believe that the credit cards shouldn't be around.
Sure.
Some people believe that the whole credit system should be abolished completely because it's dated in the way that they report. The other side of that is like anything else in business, on the business credit side. I mean, you know, there's this much of a population that knows about personal credit, and there's this much that knows about business credit. But I would say that it's kind of like the same thing in anything else at a high level, even with what you do, you know, educating the audience on maybe some of the best plans for their loved ones, or maybe if something is costing them too much, why is it costing them that much, or what coverage? I would even go out to say with the healthcare space, it's not taught enough.
Yeah. No, I run into that all the time. People go, man, this is like speaking Spanish to me, if you will. This is confusing to me, right? And it really was when I first started diving into it. Listen, guys, I'm still a rookie here, right? But as I've learned it, I go, wow, this is a whole new world. And so do you believe both of them work together? Like you obviously want to maintain your strong personal credit, but also on the business credit, you want to be developing both of those profiles. Is that correct?
Yeah, you want to have a strong personal credit. I always say you can still build business credit. You can still access business credit cards without having good credit, but that's kind of like putting a Band-Aid over an infected wound, so to speak.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I say that is because you can go into a bank right now with an LLC if you have good personal credit, and you can walk out with a business loan without having to state any income.
Sure. So what is the fastest way? What is one practical tip, real quickly, while we're camping out here just for a second? What is one practical way that someone could start building business credit? Is there something that you recommend for that kindergartner, if you will?
Yeah. So the first place you want to start is I always recommend getting an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp. The reason you don't want to do it just doing business as or with the sole prop is because it's not going to unattach itself when you start building out your business credit. So the LLC is an actual business entity, and so is a corp, right? So you want to build that out. You want to get your EIN, which, by the way, you can get your EIN for free on irs.gov. Sure. You can even YouTube of how to do that. And then you want to go ahead and open up your business bank account. Reason why you want to open up your business bank account as soon as you get those first two items is because the longer that business bank account is open, the more seasoned it looks to lenders, and the more reliable that bank looks for, let's say, a lender that wants to lend out money, i.e. business credit cards. Now, I would also say that if you wanted to access some big lines rather quickly, try to stick to your local bank. So there's really three tiers that I usually teach my students. Number one, it's going to be the national banks. That's your Wells Fargo. That's your Wells Fargo. That's your Bank of America. And then you have your regional banks. And then number three is going to be your credit unions. Credit unions are the most lenient. And the reason for that is because they're relationship based. So open up a business bank account with them as well. And then let that sit for at least 60 to 90 days before you apply for a line of credit.
Wow, man, you're sprinting some fire, brother. I appreciate you sharing this. So let me ask you this: like, somebody's probably asking this, and whenever this drops and they watch it, how much do they got to put in there? Does that play a factor into, getting approved in regards to the seasoning of the account?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
If you wanted to, let's say, try to max it out as much as possible, I would say keep it fluent. So if we're playing the game with, let's say, Navy Federal, I always recommend 90 days, and you wanna have 15 to 20 deposits coming in and out with that bank. And I think it takes less than $100 to open up an account with a credit union, anyways.
Sure. What about credit cards? Somebody's watching this and they say, well, what's the best small business credit card for me to get started? Is there one that you highly recommend?
Oh, 100%. I always recommend getting started with either Divvy, that's DIVVY. Maybe we can link it to the description of this video.
Yeah,
and
we'll.
And then you have Capital on Tap. Both of those cards are going to be revenue based, meaning it's just going to go off of your inflow and outflow of your bank account, but it's not going to hard pull you for any credit checks, which is phenomenal.
Sure. So let me ask you this, and this is just a random question that popped into my head here. How much have you seen? Do you have a case study of like the max amount you've ever seen, or maybe an average amount that you see your business clients getting when it comes to helping them getting business funding? Not the personal side, but the business side.
On the business side, we've seen as high as 250.
Wow.
250,000. On the average side, let's say if they're a startup, I'd say anywhere between 80 to about 140.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up, if you're watching this today, is because there's many of you out there that have maybe an existing business or have a business, but you need that capital to do the marketing, or you need that capital. And in our space, obviously leads and talking to people are very important, but maybe you need that administration person, or maybe you need that signage, or maybe you need to update your office if you have a brick and mortar business and you don't even know this world exists, or if you do, you don't know how to play the game, so to speak. Right. And there's people like Irv out there who are teaching these techniques that can help you get the funding that you need to go to the next level. Because you can have the greatest dream in the world and the greatest vision and the greatest no quit attitude. But Irv, you would agree with me, right? That it does take the funding in a lot of cases to go to that next level.
Oh, 100%. You need some fuel.
Yeah, you need some fuel. Exactly. And listen, I'm a firm believer in high income skills, right? I'm a firm believer in that and honing your skills, but you do got to have money in particular instances. And that's what he's teaching you, is how to leverage other people's money. Let me ask you this. I want to transition over to the leadership, and thank you so much for being so generous with all of that. I know there's a lot more we could dive into, but for the sake of time, I want to dive into the leadership here just real quickly. What is one leadership trait, principle that maybe you've learned, you've cultivated in your own life, and that you've really leaned into and that you lead from? Is there one that really just rises at the top that you can think of?
I would say that this one, especially now as I continue to kind of climb, so to speak, with my audiences, right? Like, I wouldn't say like I'm famous or anything like that, but certain notoriety that starts to kind of arise is, I would say that one of the biggest leadership attributes that I never want to lose, and especially that I continue to kind of hone in on, is my ability to connect with people. Usually what ends up happening, especially as people build out their audiences or as they reach a certain revenue, they forget what it's like in the real world for everyone else, because they start living in their own reality. And they start drinking their own Kool-Aid. And so I never want to lose a connection from someone that makes $12 an hour versus someone that makes $12 million a year. Just because when you lose the person that makes $12 an hour, again, in my mind, you're just so out of touch. And we see this all the time with politicians, not to go political, but we see this all the time with politicians, where they're just so out of touch with what's happening that when they're in a campaign or when they're speaking to an audience, it just falls on deaf ears.
So what are some tips that you've put in your life? Like, what are some practices every day that you go, hey, I need to stay connected? Can you share one or two of those practices that you put in your life to say, I don't want to ever forget where I came from. I want to make sure that I'm connecting with that audience?
100%. I try to practice gratitude and empathy every day. Grateful for where I'm at and where I'm headed and the people that I'm serving, but also empathetic for where someone is and understanding maybe they haven't caught their break just yet. Just because I caught my break and I'm sitting on my, fat cat chair, so to speak, at least from the perspective's eyes, that person may possibly didn't catch a break just yet, or maybe they're just one conversation away from it just clicking for them.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you brought that up. T.D. Jakes, who's a very famous pastor and preacher, I watched a podcast on communication. I love what he said. He said, the greatest way to influence people is to genuinely love them. Right. And so all the content that I try to produce, and of course, I'm not there either. I'm a rookie in regards to people like you guys, but I try to genuinely put passion in it. Yeah. Right. I genuinely try to let people know that the reason I'm doing this motivational content, the reason I'm doing these spitting fire interviews is because I believe there's a leader in everyone. And I believe there's a God that really wants them to win. Right. That's created them on purpose for a purpose. And I want that to resonate in everything that I do. And it sounds like you've kind of believe in the same mindset that, hey, I want my content to really make a difference. It's not just cliche. It's not just superficial, cheesy stuff. It's the real deal. Am I right?
100%. 100%. It's just, if I'm not if I'm not able to connect with you on a one-on-one conversation, I want for my content to at least connect with you at that level.
Sure. So connecting with people is one that you've really leaned into, you lead from, you teach other people to do. Let me ask you this, to the person that's watching this, you have over 100,000 subscribers. You talked about reaching about 800,000 people. What is some advice that you would give them? Because like you said, maybe they're one video away, right? Maybe that next video that they put out, they've been working on their craft, they've embraced being really sucky at it, right? We've all been there. But what if somebody's about to quit and they go, you know what, this is not getting traction. I only got 2 views, or no one's following my Instagram. No one's following me on Facebook. What is something today that you could give them right now in this moment that maybe would put fresh wind in their sails to keep pursuing that?
Oh man. That's something that I think about often, just because I've been there so many times. My thought behind it is put it out for yourself. Don't just put it out for them. Because if you put it out for yourself, you're keeping a word to your own value system that you're going to do it regardless of what they say, regardless of what they think, because that's just what you feel God has imparted in you. Some of my best content were videos till this day. Even last week were videos that they were my drafts, and I said, I guess I'll post it. I have nothing else to talk about today. And some of the most overly produced pieces of content that I spent the most time on were flops. Like the videos, go back to the videos that have, for me, let's say 100 views, 200 views, let's say on TikTok. Those videos took me so much time. And then go back to the 100K, 400,000 views. Those videos were just done in my car. And so you just never know which one is going to hit.
Right. And would you say to be successful, if you're wanting to build that brand, share your message and share your story, it sounds like, and what I have learned just in the short time that I've been doing this, is you really got to get out of your feelings, right? Because you may have this video that you go, man, this is going to be the home run. Everybody's going to, and you're like, what the heck? What happened here? Right. But then like you're talking about, you put out this unedited kind of raw, whatever video, like even this morning when my stuff crashed, it's so funny, but I go, but that video is going to be more inspiring probably than just having this, like you said, overly produced video. But it sounds like you really got to detox from your feelings. Yeah. Would you say that? Is that what you teach as well?
You have to disconnect from your feelings.
Yeah.
You have to disconnect, because when you put out a piece of content and you think that it doesn't perform the way that you wanted it, or you saw it in your mind performing, the way that I see it, it's a form of self-entitlement. You're entitled to views. None of us are entitled to views.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to even have 2 people watch our videos.
Yeah. No, I love that. I used to teach this in ministry for over 20 years, that we ever get to the point and we adopt this mindset that I have to, right? Then we've lost we've lost it, right? We always want to have, I get to. I love that, right? That I'm not entitled to views. But if I put massive content out there that's impactful, that's really bringing value to people's life, you've seen this, the views will come.
The views will come. The views will come. And then I also kind of want to shift that, because there could be someone that's looking at it and they're thinking, well, maybe my niche is a bit too tight to go viral. I'll be the first one to tell you, I've had countless videos go over 1 million views. some of the videos that I've made the most money on were the videos with less than 10,000 views.
Wow.
Because they were so specific to the audience that I was targeting in that video versus a 2 million view video that gets a bunch of likes, gets a bunch of hearts, gets a bunch of comments, but it doesn't get transactions on the back end. So you also have to be careful that you're not falling in love with vanity metrics.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. And listen, I never would have thought there would have been so many videos in this particular leveraging other people's money and how many views. But like you said, there's a hunger out there. There's a desire, people searching. And that's a great point. Listen, if you're watching this today, don't discount your story. Don't think that somebody out there or someone's out there don't want to hear the message that I believe God has put in your life, right? So as Irvin's saying today, don't discount that. Put it out there. You never know what's going to happen. It may be a smaller audience, but as he said, it may be a more profitable video because that smaller audience may be more engaged, right?
100%.
Yeah. So no, I love that, man. That's some spitting fire right there as well. Listen, I ask everybody that's on the podcast that comes on as we get ready to wrap up here today, man, you've brought it today. I appreciate it so much. If there was one word that you could use to describe yourself, just one, what would that word be?
One word?
One word.
Insightful.
Insightful. So how has insightfulness or being insightful contributed to the success that you've had today?
That's a great question. The insight that I tend to bring people in any type of content that I put out, whether it's through humor, whether it's through levity, whether it's through education, it's almost as if there is almost like a freeing that goes on, or like that light bulb that just goes off in their mind, that it's kind of that when I see that aha moment happen for them, it always brings me back of the aha moments that I've had before, and how that just completely changes the trajectory of someone's life and current situation. And so the more insight that I can bring people, however many years I have left on earth, I believe that is my purpose of why God has me here on this planet.
Yeah. And would you say this, Herb? Have you found this out in your own experience? I tell people this all the time. I get more joy out of seeing people win. I mean, I love to win too, but I think you mature to a point in your leadership in whatever arena you're in that you go, man, that is freaking awesome. Whether it's someone getting their first $15,000 credit card, if you will, in your niche, or someone a new agent that maybe we've discipled and they, get their first Medicare policy, or, even as something as simple going on their first vacation because of the money they've been able to generate through their purpose, right? Do you see that in your own life that you go, man, I just get this great joy when I see other people win?
All the time. Oh man, all the time. Even when someone says, hey, my credit jumped 20 points off of a video that I saw 6 months ago, or, hey, I just finally got approved for a mortgage for my house. My credit's good. Or, hey, Irv, I took your advice on this piece of content, landed my first client, even if it's, let's say, $100 for a consultation, or their first $10,000 client. To me, it just all feels the same, that's why we do what we do.
Yeah. And I like to say it this way, and just to put it in a faith-based perspective, and I know everybody may not be on the same page as I am, and that's okay, but I truly believe this, Irv, that the fulfillment that my divine creator wired me in such a way to find fulfillment first, and that everything I do, I'm living on purpose first for his glory. But here's the key: in such a way where I'm making a massive impact in other people's lives. Right. I truly teach this, that your life will never make sense until you're making a difference in the life of other people. And Irv, people like you in this particular arena, teaching people how to get biz funding, teaching people how to do this, leveraging other people's money, is making a difference in the lives of others. And it sounds like you're finding fulfillment in that, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I'm so grateful you came on today. I know we could talk for hours about all the content you have, but I don't want to give away all your secrets and all your tips. And I appreciate you just bringing some value to our audience today. So with that said, where can we find you? Obviously, we talked about YouTube, but what other platforms can we find you on?
Yeah, real simple. Irv Official. That's IRV.official. There's a lot of fake accounts out there, but mine's, for the most part, we're working on getting the blue check. You'll be able to find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook.
Sure. Yeah. And also podcaster, you're a podcaster. You have one channel for your like your biz credit stuff and the funding you teach, but then you also have a podcast channel that has some of that, but other content on as well.
Yeah. So over on my podcast, I always tell people that if you want to learn from me, you go to my main channel, which is Irv Official. But if you want to get to know me, go to the Inside with Irv podcast, where you really get into my mind and to just some of the beliefs that I have, which me and you, we share for the most part, same beliefs here. So
yeah. And that's where they can, if they want to learn more about this biz credit and really getting a PhD and leveraging other people's money, they can also connect with you that way as well, through your channel or through your other platforms, and reach out to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, listen, as we close today, maybe there's somebody out there watching that is really wanting to bet on themselves, but man, they're just a little fearful. You know, maybe they're wanting to pull that trigger, so to speak, but they just need a word from you, man. They just need a word today. What is one word or just some tips, some wisdom, maybe some fresh wind in their sails, if you would, that you would give them as we get ready to close today?
Depending on where you are and what you're looking to do, understand that it doesn't matter how many sob parties you throw yourself, how many pity parties. It doesn't matter how many times you strike out. It doesn't matter how many bad days you have or how lonely or just upset or depressed that you're feeling. Understand that no one is going to care about your situation more than you. And no one is going to be able to drag you out of your own pits than yourself. We can give you all the words that you want. People can comment whatever they want on your post, send you all the text messages. But at the end of the day, the person that you wake up with and the person that you go to sleep with, which is yourself, is the only person that can control what happens in their life. And so regardless of how you're feeling, you just have to go out and you have to stay focused on everything that's been put in your heart and all the plans that have been put into your mind, and continue pressing forward. I can tell you the biggest changes, and I'll leave you with this last part, the biggest impact aren't the big changes that happen, aren't the big aha moments, even though those are good. The biggest changes that happen are the tweaks that we do that are this small, the small turns, the waking up, the watching what we eat, and the watching the conversations, and even watching what we do watching what we put through our eyes as well.
No, man, you just took us to church, brother. I was looking for the choir, man, the offering plate to go around. I appreciate it, man. That's some good stuff. I love one of my favorite leadership channels on YouTube is Pastor Greg Rochelle from Life Church. And he says it this way, that successful people do consistently what others do occasionally.
Love that.
Right. And so it's that consistency, man, right? That putting out that video, whether you feel like it or not. Right. Or putting out that content, whether you feel anybody cares or not. It's consistently getting over that victim mentality and saying, you know what, if I'm going to win, I'm going to start winning today.
Bingo.
You know, and so I appreciate that. And listen, as we wrap up today, I just want to remind you, and I think Irv said it very, very well here. He said it very, very well here. And that is this, that I believe all of you were created to win. I believe there's this divine creator that put this DNA in you to be a winner, but he can't make you do it. I can't make you do it. But I pray that something that we said today and discussed pushes you, wakes you up, and compels you to go, you know what? If there's ever a year that I'm going to start making something or making a difference, it's in 2022. And I truly live this way, Irvin. And as I'm talking to all of you today, I truly believe that I have this divine creator and all of heaven cheers me on every day, that I'm fully loved and I'm fully accepted. Because here's why I believe that. Because you reproduce what you ultimately believe you deserve and what you're worth.
Love that.
Right. And you attract into your life who you really are. Real significant change is from the inside out, not the outside in. And I bring leaders on this channel like Irv and others from various industries in hopes and in prayer that something they say will wake you up and you will no longer settle. That's a double negative there. You will no longer settle for average, for the status quo, that you won't just do the things in life that other people are doing, but that you will dare to be different. Right. And you will stop caring about the opinions of others. And you'll stop caring if you're everyone's flavor. Okay. Yeah. So I pray today, something that was said today inspires you, motivates you, encourages you to go one more day after your dreams. And as always, I want to remind you again, please like, comment, subscribe, share this with somebody who you believe needs to hear this today. God bless you guys. Make it an awesome day. It takes an intentionality to make it an awesome day. Make it an awesome day, and we'll talk to you soon.